559. Okay, yeah, it's not so hard. There's 2 hard halachas. Everything else is not so hard. Hilchos Erchin Perek shlishi. Halacha Aleph. I don't know yet about Thursday. Aleph. What if a person says the erech of this person alive and he's less than 20, let's say, or he's whatever age he is? And then by the time they come to the kohen and he says, "Here's the person. What do I owe?" At that time he changed. Now he's more than 20, so his value changed, or whatever the case is. He was a one category, and then we know, and he became older, another category. Right? The guy comes and says, 20 years ago, I said, erech of this guy is upon me, the obligation to pay. I didn't think I was chayav to pay because it was Tuesday, and my mama told me that there's no obligation to pay norm that you make on Tuesday or something silly like that. And now he is chayav. You don't give the value of the person's age currently. You give the value based on the person when he was a b'shas neder. He gives the value of the person who's less than 20 years old. Because the erech, the obligation to pay the erech, again, the word erech is a very specific Torah word that defines is what the Torah calls the price of the person at that age, right? Is based on the time the person made the neder. Not the time he comes to be evaluated in Bezdin. Base. Right? So if he's 18, 4 years later you evaluate him, you shots him up as someone who's 22, not someone who's 18. Base. Because the din is in order to be chayiv, you have to go to a kohen, or I guess a kohen says, and the kohen, what's your gender, what's your age, that creates the chiyuv.
You do have to
right,
that.
Exactly.
No, I thought more so by male life.
That's when you have to. It's more complicated. Yeah.
Okay.
Base. All the terms and prices we said. If you're this female, if you're a male between 20 and 60, it's 50. If you're a female, it's 30. All those prices is if you have that amount of money to your name. If he's poorer than that, and he can't afford to pay that much, now you should call him to be other than you take from him whatever he can afford, everything he owns, right? I feel that even if he can afford just one seller, as long as it's taka one seller and not less, because it's not less, it's not considered money, as we'll see. Benifta, then he's putter, right? Bankruptcy. You say, here's what I can afford, and that's it. There's no more chiyuv. You don't say, well, here, give us 5, and the other 45 you'll give it next time when you're wealthy. That's not how it works. You pay what you can afford, and that's it. As long as what you can afford is significant enough to equal a seller. It says, if you're too poor from the erech, based on what the person can afford, that's what you pay, and no more. So Mele, we don't say, well, the erech of this guy is 50. You made a neder, you said erech of this person's a pa'alai. It's 50, he's a male who's 35, let's say. So you can only afford 40, give 40, and 10 more you'll give next time. No, if all he has is 40, he gives 40, and that's it. If he has 20, he gives 20. If he has 1, he gives 1. But what if he can't even afford one seller? That's another story. We'll see soon. How do we know that even one seller is enough to give and be considered like you gave the chiyuv? It says, all their erchim are shotted up in the shekel HaKodesh. Pashta pshat is the shekel HaKodesh as opposed to a standard shekel. But the Rambam's tongue also teaches you that it doesn't can't be less than a shekel. It has to be a shekel. Shekel is the most minimal currency used in this context. No more than 50. So the maximum erech is a male who's between 20 and 50. That's chamishim. That's the two most possible situations, most maximum situations for one person. Right? It's between a seller. That's the most minimal situation. I mean, 3 slayim if it's a female who's between the ages of 30 days and 5 years. But I'm going to take a case where the person can't afford to give 3, or for that matter, can't give 50, whatever the number is. So the most minimal possible case for one person in erech is 1 seller. And even though there's no such amount, the most minimal is 3. But when the person doesn't have more than 1, that's the erech he gives. And of course, the maximum is 50 because the psukim don't give more than that. Dalet. Now, what happens if he couldn't even afford 1 seller? The guy was so poor, even he didn't have 1 seller to his name. We don't take the half seller that he does have. The whole chayv is upon him. If in the future he gets and he can afford, he gives the whole erech that the Torah says he gives. So if he gives, if he can't even give 1 seller, he's still chayiv in the 50. Let's say it was a case where he said erech ploni alai, and the guy was a male of 30 years old. He's chayiv 50. He only has a half a seller. The chiyuv is upon him. Tomorrow he wins the lottery. He has to give 50 slayim. If he has 1 seller, he gives it his pater. Tomorrow he wins the lottery. He hasn't to pay anything. He already paid his chayiv and he declared the bankruptcy. Right? That's it.
And if he doesn't have a seller,
Right, there remains a point because he wasn't mamchi the chayv. Yeah, hey, he didn't satisfy the chayv. Oh, I think this is a concept of bankruptcy, right? You have a concept of bankruptcy when you declare bankruptcy. That's you pay what you can afford, and that's it. You don't declare bankruptcy.
What I'm saying, and he got one seller.
That's no, because if the next day, because if the next day he gets two slayim, you don't make him give the two right away. The chiyuv is upon him until he can afford the whole entire thing. L'chayra. That's why l'chayra. Because we shouldn't assume he gets 50 in one shot. It's a gradual process. Whenever he gets there, because b'shas the kohen says what's the guy's age, what's his gender. That's when you pass him what he owes. And if at that time he can't afford anything, so the chayv remains until he can afford the full amount. Right? Exactly. Yeah. Hey. A person who says and he becomes poor. So the Chassi made a net he could afford very much. Then, and the chayr of the pshat is that the kohen said the amount he has to pay, and then he became poor. Or he made an erech as an ani when he only can afford one selah, and then we say okay, give one selah. But then before he actually gave the selah, he won the lottery. He's a chayav erech. Either case, he's chayav to give the erech of an usher. So because he's poor now. The chiyuv is still upon him, and the Bishashi made the net that he was an usher. He can't be yotze by giving anything less than the full amount. Therefore, he has to give whatever he can afford, and the chiyuv remains upon him until to complete until when he can. If he made erech plenty a lie, he was poor. Then he became wealthy, and he became poor again. So even though the moment he became wealthy, now he's paid the whole thing. Because he became poor afterwards, he goes back to his original state. And therefore, he gives the erech of an ani, which means that he can give whatever he can afford as long as there's at least one selah. Then he's put there going forward. Good. So in other words, as long as he's an ani, b'shas he made the neder, and he's an ani, b'shas we're collecting from him. Even if he was wealthy in between, it's machashesh he still gives the halacha of an ani like a person who was never wealthy at all in between. Vav ashish amar, a wealthy person says erech yolam, give my erech. This person's erech. And a poor person hears this says the poor person hears the rich person say erech yalai, and the rich person can afford to give 50 because he's a male who's between the ages of 30 and at 20 and 50. Excuse me. The poor person already said ma shama zalai. I'm also mechuyev to give what this guy said. So is it considered like the ani said erech of the usher alai, or let's say the usher said erech yankel alai? So is it as if the ani said erech yankel alai, or is it if the usher said the ani said I'm mechuyev 50 slayim? The ani is chayav to give the erech of an usher, which is the full erech. Because in that case, you say it's like the ani is essentially saying the chayav to give 50 slayim. It's not a din of erechin. It's a din of the darim or a pledge of the dove of the Beis Hamikdash, and you used a very crude way of saying I'm pledging 50 slayim, 50 shkalim. If a poor person says about an usher, this guy, Mr. Rothschild, his erech is upon me, and Rothschild is 45 years old and he's a man. He's chayav to give an erech of a regular person, like he's an ani. There's no nafkamina when you say the ne'erach, the person who's being upgeshatzt, how much money he has is irrelevant. The mela, I think the Rambam is telling us, you don't think that because the ani himself, the person himself who's being ne'erach is wealthy, and therefore he'd be mechuyev to give erech ashir. So if the ani uses him as a dugma of what he's shouting up, he says erech pleni alai, so you would think maybe he's chayav erech ashir. So that answer is no. When you say erech pleni alai, pleni's financial status is not relevant. Not a get. Which is basically according to what the ani can afford. If it's one cell, it's one cell. That's it. Halacha zayin, yeah.
When you say erech pleni alai, you have to have the permission of the other person.
No, b'chalal not.
So the other person doesn't have to know you.
No, not for that.
You randomly can pick any person.
No, the guy that's so I know his name is Yankel. He's Naftali Bennett. I never met him. Erech Naftali Bennett alai. Yeah, erech pleni alai. Right? Sure, 1,000%.
And you don't need the permission.
No, b'chalal not. Zayin ma bein hachayav erech ani v'chayav erech ashi. What's the so now the Rambam explains more articulately what we said so far. What is the difference between chayav erech ani or chayav an erech of an ashi? Right? The Torah just says give the erech. If the guy is this guy who you shotzed up is 40 years old, he's a man, so it's 50 slayim. So what's the difference between the erech of an ani and an usher? Where usher we pay the whole thing. So the chayav be'erech ani shlokhu menu kol ma sheyesh b'ed masegas. The person who's chayav an erech of an ani that they took from whatever he can afford at that time, as long as it's one seller, at least one seller. Afilu seller echad, as long as one seller. And after he becomes wealthy, any chayav l'shalom, he's not chayav to pay anything more. Once he paid up his due, we check the box off. He's part of that's it. If we say you saw you chayiv an erech of an usher, that means you also obviously only take the one seller he has. But in that case, you say that the remaining amount of money that he didn't pay yet remains. It's a chiv upon him. He has to pay the rest eventually. That's the difference between erech ani and erech usher. Erech ani means bankruptcy. You pay what you can afford, and that's it. You're potter. And erech usher means it remains a chiv upon you until you pay it. Ches. A person who says erech plain yalai, but this time he also chooses to say the number. Erech yalai chamishim slayim. Now it's anybody's chamishim slayim. But the fact that he said chamishim, erech plain yalai chamishim slayim, it's 30, let's say. In that case, there's no halacha of based on what you can afford. You take everything he has, even if he gave everything, the rest is still a chiv upon him. Because the din of erech ani is only when he uses the standard lashon of erech plain yalai or erech yalai. But when he says erech plain yalai shloishim shloim, even though it's anyways shloishim, that's equivalent to saying I am making a dava or a neder to the Beis Hamikdash to give 30 shloim. In that case, you don't say the whole concept of an ani taking what he has and the rest is he's potter from. That's exactly the that only applies to the din of erechim. And when you say erech plain yalai shloishim shkolim, it's no longer erechin. It's nedarim. So it's a different category. Tes. If someone says, I'm giving my market value to the Beis Hamikdash, I may plain yalai or his market value to the Beis Hamikdash, and you need the Hesed again. You don't have this concept of Hesed of how much you can afford. When you chayiv damim, essentially it's as if you were farish and specified the neder. It's as if you said, "Mana alai hektish, I'm to give 100 slayim to the Beis Hamikdash. Shu chayiv within mana ugamor. You have to give a full 100 shkalim. Your financial status is irrelevant. If you can't afford it, you have to give whenever you can afford it in the future. Yud. If someone says, I'm to give an erech. Now we already said that because he didn't say erech of who, he just said an erech. What's the most minimal erech in the Torah? A female who's between a month and 5 years old. How much is erech? 3 slayim. But he doesn't say that. He just says erech, right? So is it like he said the articulated 3 slayim, in which case he has to give 3, and if he can only afford 1 or 2, the third is a chayiv le'elam v'ed? Or is it like in case he said erech of this baby girl upon me, in which case he could give 1 or 2 slayim and then declare bankruptcy? So the Rambam says, you don't consider it as if he said specifically 3 clearly. It's like you shot him up like a regular case of hesegad or affordability. It's as if he said erech baby girl ze'alai, in which case you shots up. If he can't afford 3 slayim, only 1 or 2, that's what he pays. The rest he's not mechuyev. Okay, you know if you're based on the ones we gotta start thinking a little bit. If someone says erech yolai, I'm giving my erech, right? Let's say his erech, he's a male, he's 30 years old, 30 something, so he's giving 50 slayim. He has to give 50 slayim. Chazam, then he says erech I have to give again. So he said, of course, he has now to give 2 nedarim, 2 times 50. That's 100. Good. He didn't have 100. All he had was 10 to his name. Now, stop a second. What's he supposed to do? He's supposed to go to the kohen and said, I made on Sunday a neder to give erech yalai. Then on Monday I made another neder to give erech yalai. What should I do? So the kohen is supposed to tell him, how old are you on Sunday? I was 33. You have to give 50 slayim. How old were you on Monday? I was still 33. Yeah, I have to give another 50 slayim. Now he's mechuyev to give 50 slayim for the first one, 50 for the second one. So he only has 10 slayim.
What gave you permission to do a second statement? You still haven't even paid the first.
You can make as many pledges as you want. Pledges are gosnish, right? You know, the other joke, during the 6-Day War, there were a group of Arabs, they broke into the central bank in Tel Aviv. You know that? They stole 185,000 shkalim in pledges. Okay, so he gave 2. So he said 2 fine. So now the kohen is supposed to say, okay, for the first one you owe 50. He said, I'm sorry, I only have 10. That's all I have. Okay, you give 10. Now you put it for the first one. The second one, what do you have? I have nothing. Not even one seller. No, the second one you'll give when in the future when you become wealthy. Fine. So he's put from the first one. Second one, he's not put. He didn't give anything. That's what he's supposed to do. But this guy apparently came to the kohen, and I guess to make the case make sense, he told the kohen first. On Monday, I made a neder erech yalai, and I have to give. So how much I owe? He said, how old are you on Monday? I was 33. You have to give 50. So he says he takes 9 of his 10 out of his pocket. He says, here, this is what I have, or he gives you this is for the neder. He says that's what I can afford, and then he tells a different kohen, let's say about the first neder that he made on Sunday. And he says, how old are you then? I was 33. You have to give 50 slayim. I only have 1. Here's the 1. So so instead of doing what he's supposed to do, which is giving 10 slayim for the first neder, because since he made it first, That's the first come first of chiyuv. And the second one would be a chiyuv l'um void. He didn't do that. He gave 9 slayim for the second one, and then 1 seller for the first one. Nasan teish l'shniya, 9 slayim for the second neder. V'seller v'sheni, and 1 seller remaining for the first neder. Yati de shteyan. In that case, he yates both of them. You'll tell me, B'shas he gave you'll tell me, Mela, when he gave for the first neder at the end, he gave his last seller. He's parted from that. Fine. But the first one, he didn't get everything he has. So therefore, why was he parted completely? If by giving when he gave for the second one, which he gave first, the 9 slayim, he didn't give everything he had. So he didn't satisfy the chiyuv. So why is he yotze? So Rambam says, chayvis are different. If I owe 2 people money, one guy I borrow from on Sunday, one guy I borrowed from on Monday, and now I only have one piece of property. So the din is, if the guy who I owed afterwards, who came later, takes the property, we say that's not legitimate payment. The first guy is entitled because you bought from him first. We take it and give it to the first one. But over here, even though it's 2 chiyuvim, but they're both going to the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, even though whatever I have is meshuvah for the first neder, but hektish mu'ucha shegava, the fact is, if hektish takes, even though it's Johnny come lately, gava has the right to take. So that applies, I think, even if it's between, if I owe you and I owe hektish. But here I owe hektish both cases. The second chiyuv has the right. It's legitimate when he took it. So therefore, when I gave the 9 slayim for the second neder, and I left the first one for the first neder, that first one was legitimate. That first one was meshubed. Remember, the first neder is the one that has the first shibud. L'chadchila. So the seller I left over, when I gave 9 for the second neder, and the seller I left over I didn't give, I wasn't like keeping it, for something else. I gave it for hektish eventually. The mela, exactly. The mela, that one seller was legitimate payment. So certainly be the evet. So when I gave the second one, I gave 9. In other words, when I was going to put my hand in my pocket to give money for the second one of those slayim already belonged somewhat to the first one. So when I gave 9, I did give everything I had, really, in a certain way, because the first one is not mine. It's very meshubah to the first neder. And then when I give the last seller to the first neder, I can give away everything I have. Pasha b'gashmius. The mela, you had to both of them be the evet. And therefore, I don't know anything now anymore.
Had you given all 10 to the first one, then the second one would have remained a chayv.
Correct. Now, I'll be masan teish l'rishayna. What if I gave 9 for the first one? Instead of 10 for the first one, I gave 9 for the first one. I gave the first like I'm supposed to. I didn't give enough. The acha should gave my last one for the second neder. The second I'm yetzer. When I gave for my last seller for the second neder, I had nothing left. But my second says he can't afford to take anything more. But the first I'm not yetzer. Whatever you have, all 10 is meshubah to the first one. When you gave the 9 for the first neder, you had 1 seller remaining. But he didn't give everything he can afford. And you only pat yourself from the chiyuv without paying the full amount if you give your last penny, your last seller. Therefore, the first erech remains a chiv upon him until he becomes wealthy and pays up the rest. See, the other 41, because he gave 9. Right, exactly. So if
9 first or 1 first.
You could say the case if we gave 1 and they gave 9. That's the not important.
The first case.
The point is he gave at least a seller for each one. It could be 5 and 5 also, same thing. Why the Rambam says 9 and 1, I'm not sure. But the point is that
What's the difference between the first case and the second case?
Oh, no.
First case, he doesn't have to pay anything.
Let's do the second case first. The second case he does, he has the first
Nine for
neder.
the first one.
He wasn't supposed to do that. He was supposed to give all 10.
Yeah.
But he gave 9. Did he give everything? Did he pay the full of 50? No. Did he pay everything he has? No. The Mela, he still owes the other 50, the other 40, 41.
And so he gets
Comes the second neder. How much does he owe for the second one? Also 50. How much does he have remaining? 1. He gave it. He's potter.
Okay.
That's the second case.
That makes sense. Okay.
The first case, he comes and he wants to give for the second neder first. But he owes for the first one. For the first neder has first rights. Again, they're both the Beis Hamikdash, but the first neder, so to speak, has first rights.
And he did something smart.
And it's already, it's all 10 are meshubah to the first neder. So when he gives a part, in the Rambam example 9, but you could say 5 the same price or whatever amount, when you give a part of what you have, part of your 10, at least 1 seller or more, to the second neder, you already, so to speak, you already, the money that's remaining is meshubah to the first. So when you gave for the second neder, you gave b'di'evet you gave b'di'evet in the way that it counts. Because again, Hektish has the right to take b'di'evet the later nedarim first. So
No, that would be only 901. You
Yeah?
Say 5. He gave the second one 9, and he left a shibud of the first one for at least 1.
right.
So the second one he knocked off.
Right.
Because he
Right.
technically does not have
Right.
more than 9.
Right, Beryl. The point is that when he gave the 9 slayim for the second neder, it's like he gave everything because even though there's one cell in his pocket, it's there physically. But who has a lien on it, right? The first neder. So he satisfied the second neder really, even though he paid for it and he doesn't really have anything else. And the first one he physically gives everything he has, so he has nothing. So that's why both are considered. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Base. So this guy saved it. So by doing this in the second case, by giving the way he did, he saves himself 9 slayim. He gives 41 instead of 50. If he did it the proper way, which is give all 10 for the first one, he would have 50 a chiyuv of 50 for the second one. But he didn't do it that way. He gave 9 for the first one and 1 for he gave 9 for the first one, which means he still has to pay 41. 1 for the last one, which is put completely. So he has to pay. He saved himself 9 slayim basically in this trip. Okay, your days. If he had done what he's supposed to do, which is give 10 slayim for the first neder, and then he would have no money for the second neder, not even 1 selah, that 50 slayim would be a chiv on him.
For the second
50, but 41 is less than 50. So yeah. So if he says Shnei Erchi Alai, I am mechuyev to give 2 erchin. He didn't say Erchi Alai and then again Erchi Alai. But if Hayab Yadi Elapach Mikdash Shnei Erchin, he doesn't have 2 erchin. So let's say he doesn't have 1 erchin. You'll see why I think this. Okay, Harei Davar Safek. So it's a suffix in the Gemara. Im nitzbes l'shtein v'neisen chatzi mashiyesh b'yali erech echad v'chatzi erech sheni b'yipater. Do you say he has, let's say, 40 slayim? 20 goes for one, 20 goes for the other, and therefore he gave what we have for both, and he's pater. So this chiv of 100, he gives 40 and pater. Or you say yitin erech echad and shalim, or you take the 40, give that for one of the erechin, which is 50, and the other 10 he's pater from because he gave whatever he has. Or you call him to be whatever he can afford, right? So he has, let's say he has 50 or less. The Yishar and the other 50, the other 50 shleim, the other erech remains a chayv on him until he'll give that in the future sometime when he can afford. Whether it's he'll give it as 1 selah as an erech ani, or if he has all 50, give erech asher. But whatever it is, he has to address the other erech eventually. So it's not clear. Do you judge this like a case similar to we had where he says erech alai 2 times, or is like he says erech alai 100 slayim 1 b'chiv? It's not clear. That's a suffix in the Gemara. Good, fine. So because the suffix again, you would say mitzvah chavaraya, and depends if he has yarshim. If he's around, he has to give the maximum to fulfill his nether. If it's yarshim, then they give the minimum. Now the whole thing about the previous case with the first and the second wouldn't apply. There's no first and second. He just said 2 erechin, so there's no case of first and second. That wouldn't be negeya. Okay, Yud Gimel. And here to the end is pretty simple. The person separates money because he knows he said erech alai. He takes $50, 50 shloim, he puts it in a safe drawer because he wants to have it, and then it gets lost or it's stolen. There's a fire, it gets stolen. Either he didn't say the words alai. He's chayiv nachrayis of the money until it reaches the hand of the gizber. He can't say, well, listen, I had the money. It's not my fault. It got burnt. Shemer says, give your erech on that day for Hashem. So that day becomes hektish. If I take $100 bill and I say, this is hektish, the base HaMikdash. Right, and then lightning strikes and vaporizes. So then fine, my $100 of the base HaMikdash is gone. I don't have to replace it. If I say, I'm $100, and I separate $100, and then it gets stolen, fine. So that $100 is gone. I got to make a new $100. But if I say this $100, then I'm putter. So when a person says erech alai, even though he designated money, he's still the chiyuvs on the person until he actually gives it to Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, they're chulun, even though he separated them until it reaches the Beis Hamikdash gabai, and therefore, if it gets lost, he has to replace it. Yudalid. The chiyuvim are both erech and damim. Whether he says erech alai or damim alai, mashkin you have the right to take a mashkin from the person till he actually will pay up. And they take from them whatever the amount of nether is. Unlike personal chayiv. You don't have to return the mashkin a day or at night. The whole halach is about the person, right? If it's a blanket, you have to give it back to him for nighttime, like we learned, and or like we will learn in Sefer Shoftim or Mishpatim rather. And if it's a daytime keli, you have to give back to the day. All those halachas don't apply to hektish. Meichin calling him to the hem when you sell everything he owns to pay up the chayiv. Property, movable property, land, miksus, clay tashmish, clothing, and other kelim, tashmabayis, the household kelim, avadim slaves, the hayman animals, v'nefarm, all of it you extract the money. You don't sell the clothing that belongs to his wife, nor his children, even though technically speaking, whatever a wife or a child owns, if he's a cotton, belongs to the father. But when he designates it for them in this way, that they have the rights to it, and therefore Hektish doesn't take it. They own it enough that his ned doesn't encompass that. Or if it's clothing that he dyed the wool to make it a certain color, dafka for his wife or kids, or new sandals that he bought for them. All these things Hektish does not take for Erchin. If a person says everything I own is Hektish, these items you just listed that belongs to my wife and kids are not Hektish. Tesvav. Now this guy, do we leave him anything at all? We leave him mamish in his gat. So what do you leave him? This person who has Erchin, you leave him like this. Like the bias, or if the case, even if regular case, we says I have to give him money. What do you leave him? You leave him his tefillin, the sandal and his shoes. A chair to sit on. A mattress and a mat in order for him to sleep on. A bed and a mattress basically sleep on. If he was poor, you give him like a bed and a mapot, which is a lower quality mattress because he's used to that to sleep on. You leave him food for 30 days. And clothing for 12 months, only for him, not for his wife and kids, these things. So even though you can't take for his wife and kids certain things, you don't leave him extra money to buy his wife and kids those things if they don't have them, let's say. He has to pay, he's obligated to support his wife and kids and clothe them. Still, you don't leave him this money over, or these things that he wants to buy to use for them. You give him his clothing. So you don't tell. He says, "Yeah, I have this money. Leave me extra money for extra cash for this. I want to buy my wife's clothing." That you don't leave him. Tezayin. I love Clayton. You're leaving enough money
for Muslim shloshim, yeah? What happens then?
Yeah, good kasha. Tezayin.
Even by a mashkin, there's a lot. You're not mashkin things that's a echol nefesh.
No, so fine. Over here we'll see. Could be that Lav can do that as well. I'm not sure.
What?
So good to exactly. Yeah. Tezayin. How you love clay mesh? You've got a muzhav. That's what Rambam says in the end of the sefer, and not the sefer. That person should not be makish everything he owns. It's not appropriate. How you love clay mesh? You've got muzhav. If he has very expensive clothes, that's also possible. Yeah. If he had on him silk clothing and golden clothing, which is very expensive, we take him from him. You give him clothing appropriate for him. The chayil for the weekday. You don't give him extra clothing, extra quality for Shabbos Yontif. So even though Shabbos Yontif is supposed to wear nicer clothing, that doesn't supersede the need for Hektish to get paid up. Yud Zayin. If he's a craftsman, right? If he's a singer, he doesn't have any tools, right? If he's a therapist, all he does is talk. He doesn't have to have any tools either, right? If he's a craftsman, he needs hammers and saws. You give him 2 tools from every type. Case of example, if he's a carpenter, you give him 2 matzah, which is like matzah is like a flattening, like a plane, like a lever, some kind of thing which flattens, which smooths it out. Megaris and 2 saws. If he had, let's say, a lot of saws, he had 10 saws, and a little bit of the other one. He only had one of the other keli, one plain, one smoother. So he'll say, listen, I have 10 saws and 1 smoother. I'm entitled to 2 of each. Take a few of my saws, I'll sell them, I'll buy a smoother, I'll have 2 and 2. So we say, no, you don't sell from that which has a lot to buy from the mu'at. You give him 2 kelim from the 10 saws, and what he has, the one he has of the mu'at, but you can't start bartering. That's not how it works. If he's a camel driver or a farmer, and you don't leave him as behemoths. It's not considered a keli. Even that's the only way he makes a livelihood. If he's a sailor, you don't leave him his boat. You sell it because that's not considered a keli. That's considered a chasim, property. You test. If he has among his property servants and behemoths and gems, and the merchants, the experts say, this Eved, if you just make an investment of 30 slime, buy him 30 slime worth of nice clothing. or give him a nice 10 for 30 slime. He'll become 100 worth more. So now you're gonna get 70. It's a good investment. But part of this cow, if you wait until it to the meat market. In other words, you take this place where the meat's more expensive, or you wait to this day where people need meat. If Pesach is coming, let's say, it increases its value. I'm going to use these diamonds. If you take it to this place, to shove money out, it'd be worth much more. The here's only worth a bit. We don't do that. What do we do? You sell it all in its location, not currently, or b'shaiti at that time. Kamashu, whatever it's worth then and there. It says in the pasuk, you give the erech on that day. Hektish Hashem, the Rabbi is called Davar Shal Hektish. This includes anything which is being sold for Hektish or given to Hektish. Shein mefarkesin oisai. You don't bring it to the marketplace. Sorry, you don't
upgrade it.
Yeah, embellish it. Thank you. Yeah, the bashuk. You don't wait for the market day. You don't take it to new locations. Hektish only gets what is there then and there, and the reason is partially because we're afraid that it will be damaged or stolen if it's removed from one place to the other, and therefore the Rambam says supply movable properties and slaves. Property, you can't pick up a piece of property and walk away with it. You make an auction and announce it's for sale for 60 days, morning and night. Then you sell it, and then the price tag will go up because you can't walk away with a piece of property, so we don't have to worry about it.
What happens to the plastic that
The chayra, this is according to the